track so it can be a better and more effective way of doing it, if that is truly where we're going to be, and I believe that is where Councilman Weston wants to be. But I quite frankly cannot see any more of my constituents look at them in the eye and say things will get better, because quite frankly they're not. And if we don't vote for the Planning Commission report, we're going to prolong their misery. We have more kids living in cars, more parents working 2-3 jobs, more kids without supervision, more kids getting sucked up by the gang culture, more truancy, greater dropout rates. It's all connected because there is no home.
What the council is voting on is an increase in relocation fees to help tenants move to new housing. That compensation would be linked to length of tenancy, financial need, as well as consideration for the disabled, the elderly, and parents of young children. The fee increase would go from a previous high of over $8,000 to a new high of a little over $17,000.
Now we have before us, we'll take up the, if there's no objection, we'll split the two. So we'll take up the ordinance first. If we can please open the roll on the ordinance as it came from committee. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 5 noes.
Okay. That will go over 1 week. The recommendations are now before us, so please open the roll on the committee recommendations. Please open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes, 1 no.
Okay. And the recommendation, it was the committee recommendations, the non-ordinance parts, we split the two. So, okay, and that will be approved. So this will be back with us in 1 week. Thank you all.
Because the vote on the ordinance was not unanimous, a second vote will be required next week. You can listen to City Council meetings as well as committee and commission meetings on the telephone by using the city's council phone system. In the downtown area, dial 213-621-CITY. In West LA, dial 310-471-CITY. For the San Pedro area, dial 310-547-CITY. And in the San Fernando Valley, dial 818-904-9450. Just follow the recorded instructions for the meetings you want to hear. And we invite you to address the Los Angeles City Council on any item on the council agenda, as well as during public comment. You may come downtown to City Hall or go to the Van Nuys City Hall and participate via video teleconferencing. And remember, you can watch all Los Angeles City Council meetings live in their entirety on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays beginning at 10 a.m. On Sundays, you can watch the replay of all the week's meetings, also beginning at 10 a.m. Council Week in Review can be seen Monday through Friday at 9:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Well, that concludes our program for the week ending April 6th, 2007. On behalf of Martin Martinez and everyone here at Channel 35, I'm Jack Popejoy. Thank you for watching, and please join us for the next Council Week in Review.
My name is Jacques Hay, and I'm a community activist, and I have a goal in my life to try to make the city a better city every day. I'm also involved in a lot of community events, but recently inside our trophy shop, we put in a 9-hole miniature golf course, complete with palm trees, sand traps, a water hole, and we held a miniature golf contest for a local high school down the street called Miller High School, in which all 240 of the students in the school have a disability, and we raised over $8,000 having a miniature golf contest for the school. My family was fortunate enough 12 years ago to start the first camp for Jewish children with disabilities. The name of the camp is Camp Chesed. Chesed in Hebrew means loving kindness. And for 2 weeks out of the year, we take about 40 kids and their families to Disneyland, Universal Studios, the whole gambit for 2 weeks. It's absolutely free. We provide 2 to 3 counselors per child, and we take no money at all from the families and spend the whole year fundraising for the camp. I'm fortunate enough to live in a city which has beautiful climate. It's large enough that you can do anything you want on a certain day, go to the beach, go to the mountains, etc., and yet it still has a sense of community where you live. My name is Jacques, and I'm a face of LA.
LA City View Channel 35. Your city, your channel.
Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to a meeting of the City Council for today, the 11th of April, 2007. We are meeting in City Council Chambers, John Ferraro Memorial Council Chambers, room 370 here in City Hall, where we meet every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. We invite members of the public to come join us here in City Hall for our meetings, and today want to welcome a special class that we have from Cal State Fullerton that's here, political scientists. Thank you for being here. We are here each Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, except for the first Friday of the month in which we meet in Van Nuys City Hall. Otherwise, we're here, and we occasionally take City Council out into other neighborhoods. Most recently, we did that in the 15th Council District, down in the southern stretches of Los Angeles. I want to welcome our viewers on Channel 35. We are broadcast live through the city's cable system on Channel 35, LA City View, your city channel. And we are rebroadcast in the evening via tape delay. We also are available online through the city's homepage at www.lacity.org. And you can click through the links to watch us live on the web through streaming video. Lastly, if you're not close to a computer or close to a television, you can always call audio service we have called Council Phone, which allows you to listen to the proceedings of the City Council or any of our committees. That number is 213-621-CITY. Our agendas are available online also at lacity.org, at the City Clerk's office, or also here in Council Chambers. And we have local high school students who serve as Council ambassadors who can explain to you the ins and outs of City Council in the back of the room. If you're interested in speaking to the City Council, either in general public comment or for any of the items that have been agendized for a public hearing, please fill out a speaker card in the back and hand them to one of the sergeants at arms, and we will make sure that you get in the speaker queue. All items receive a public hearing either in committee or here in the full council. And on the agenda, you can see which items have been agendized for a public hearing. With that, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Gruel, Han, Weezer, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Wesson, Zine, Garcetti. 11 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Ms. Perry moves and Mr. Smith seconds. Without objection, those will be approved. Next order of business.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Labange moves and Mr. Parks seconds. Without objection, those two will be approved. Next order of business.
Mr. President, do you wish to take up public comment at this time?
Sure. Let's go ahead to public comment at this time. And we have 3 speaker cards right now. And I'd like to invite John Matisiak and then Arnold Sachs. Welcome, John. Good morning.
Hi, I'm John Matishak. Good morning. On October 31st, the City Attorney's Office stated that Municipal Code 1295.2 does not conflict with the Ellis Act. It can immediately be implemented. On November 2006, the City Council voted to immediately implement the vacancy rate law of Municipal Code 12952. Council members and tenants alike agree that this law has the potential to curb the current housing crisis. However, as of March 2007, the Planning Department continues to ignore the plain directive and language of the law and has failed to implement the law in the case of condo conversions and applying the applicable factors of the cumulative effect. Please come and support your neighbors and tenants.
Excuse me, Mr. President. This item is on the agenda, and there already was a hearing on it.
Okay. If you can conclude, we have that on the agenda.
Of course,
Thank
yeah.
you.
And holding the city accountable for its own laws, there is a hearing today before the East Los Angeles Area Planning Commission at 4:30 at 458 North Figueroa Street, Ramona Hall. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Arnold Sachs is our next speaker.
Good morning, City Council. Just very quickly, public comment allows you to speak on anything within the City Council's agenda. So even if an item is on the agenda, a person can use his 2 minutes as public comment to speak on that item. Is that correct, Mr. President? Would you please hold my time?
You can continue, please. This is your 2 minutes. You can use it however you'd like, sir.
I'm asking a question. I mean, the city attorney, this is the second time the city attorney has interrupted a speaker speaking about something that's on the agenda.
I'll have him address that after you finish your
Thank
comments.
you. I would like to address the fact that, according to the LA Times, there's 4 unions are coming up for their labor contracts are due to expire this year, and they're going to be in contract talks with the city. And I would kindly ask these unions to show some restraint and their demands and forego a pay raise, but make sure that their leadership asks the city that they receive the same benefit that the DWP contract awarded its workers by allowing them to work their personal time as overtime. They need that as a benefit. That was not that shouldn't be construed as a pay raise, but as a benefit to the workers, and all the departments should be able to receive the same benefits from the City of LA. Remember, the City Council received their pay raise this year, and I would appreciate if the city workers would have that kind of restraint. And also, just very quickly, I'd like to point out to the students that are here, while you're here, please watch the council voting procedure. You'll be in for a very, very pleasant surprise. They have a tote board that shows the council votes, but not necessarily all the council members vote. Pay close attention and ask yourself why.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sachs.
Oh, please address my question, sir.
I will. I'll have him. I'll have the city attorney reiterate the policy on public comment. Oscar Johnson is our next speaker. In the meantime.
Good morning, City Council. My name is Oscar Johnson. I'm active for the homeless on Skid Row, and I see where the mayor of Los Angeles get $180 million a year annually for the help the homeless on Skid Row, where they receive no benefit from. And I'm involved with the gang members, and I see where the city councilman get money for the gang, $80 million a year for no results. And I was thinking about maybe we should build a job training center in Watts and a theater and some bowling alleys for recreation. And we should stiffen the death penalty for senseless killing in Los Angeles through the district attorney's office. But I see where the district attorney's office give the city police department a lot of leeway to kill innocent people in Los Angeles, especially people of color. And they're very targeted day and night to being a stigma and a scapegoat for this problem society. And there's so many unfair justice that our law is doing, the government is doing, giving money to one race of people to govern another race of people, but it's totally against our Constitution. And there's so many bad businesses in Los Angeles that have turned to business fraud. And all through the city of Los Angeles, I see that the mayor have given Hollywoods the rights to park in the city of Los Angeles overnight through some type of city permit or city function or not. That is really transgressing the boundaries in the city of Los Angeles. But maybe one day if I get the opportunity to speak in the state senate in California, where I've been offered opportunity to go and speak, I want to tell them about so much of bad government that's going on in Los Angeles, California, and something really should be done about it. When you see the masses of people is suffering from economic racism and economic upliftment, and our city government that's turning their backs on them and putting the money in their pocket instead of putting the money where it should go to the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. City Attorney, do you want to reiterate on general public comment what the policy is for public hearings on items that have been agendized or received a public hearing?
Yes, Mr. President. The Brown Act allows discussion on items on the agenda, public comment. However, if public comment was already taken up on an agenda item at a previous meeting or at a committee meeting, and that item has not changed substantially since that previous meeting, then the Brown Act allows council to not have public comment on those agenda items. And also the council rules state that general public comment is reserved for items not on the agenda.
Thank you, sir. Chuck Tenen is our next speaker.
Good morning, council members, President Garcetti.
Good morning.
The city attorney, could you clarify that again? Because I was going to make a public comment on the tenant relocation protection ordinance. If it says public comment is not on an agenda, am I allowed to speak on
I
public
believe
comment?
he clarified, unfortunately, we can't. We'll look at that rule, but under the way that it's agendized, on the agenda, it says that clearly for items that are not on the agenda, public comment is afforded, and that's how the Brand Act also is written. But we can look into that, but unfortunately, unless it's reopened, we wouldn't be able to take that testimony today.
Okay, but I could make a general comment that
Sure.
might be related.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, with regard to that issue, it's come a long way, and again, I would like to thank Herb Weston and his committee, Ed Reyes and Eric and Jen and Herb and Bill for their hardworking efforts in getting this issue to the City Council for vote. It's been a long year of a lot of hearings and everything. It's a big step in the right direction that started 20 years ago, and where are we now? We're on the threshold of housing reform and tenant protection measures. And there was a comment that Councilman Alarcon had made about the poor, and I just wanted to reiterate that tenants that are displaced and disrupted include poor. They're families with kids, seniors, disabled, people that can't afford things, but they're tenants, and poor comes under that. And you made a comment about not voting for something about because of the word poor, and yet poor comes under that, unless I misunderstood that. But those tenants that are displaced, when they get displaced, and with the market rates of today, a lot of people can't afford. That includes poor, disabled, long-term tenants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tenen. That closes our general public comment. If we can please run through the agenda, Madam Clerk. And if I can ask Sergeants at Arms to assist in quieting down some of the discussions, and if I can encourage people to take their discussions either outside or to keep them to a minimal level. Thank you. First item.
Item number 1 is an item noticed for public hearing, and the applicant consents to a continuance to May 1st.
May 1st, is there any objection to continuing item 1? Seeing none, that'll be the order. Next item.
Next items are items for which public hearings have been held. Items 2 through 21. Items 2 and 3 are commissioners. Do you wish to hold those on the desk?
Yes, let's hold the commissioner nominees on the desk, please.
And on item number 4, there's a request from Council District 7 to continue that matter to April 25th.
Okay. If there's no objection, we will continue that till April 25th, you said?
Yes.
2-5.
And also on item number 5, Councilmember Grue requests that matter be continued for 1 week to April 18th.
April 18th, without objection, colleagues. Next item.
And that would leave before Council items 6 through 21. And on item number 10, the report has been submitted and distributed to the council members.
Okay. Mr. Smith? I'm sorry?
17 for amendments.
Okay.
Been passed out.
Mr. Smith on number 17. Mr. Parks?
On number 8, I'd like to get a continuance for a week.
Okay, without objection, continuance for 1 week. That would take us to the 18th. There's no objection, so ordered. Are there specials, colleagues? We have 6 through 21 right now.
Could you hold 14 on the desk, please?
14 on the desk.
Thank you.
Mr. Zine.
Somebody calling 6?
6, Ms. Hahn. All right, and 19 is linked to that. Do you want both of those? 19, are those taken up together, Madam Clerk?
If council wishes, it can take those matters up together.
Okay, we'll put those together then. Are there specials, colleagues? Seeing none on the balance, let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Next items are items for which public hearings have not been held. Items 22 through 46, 10 votes are required for consideration.
We have a card on item 22, so we'll call that special. Are there specials, colleagues? Mr. Parks?
Item 24 special and item 43.
24 and 43 for Mr. Parks. Are there specials? Seeing none, let's go ahead and open the roll.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Mr. President. There's a request to continue item number 46A to Friday.
46A. Is there any objection to continuing that till Friday? That'll be the 13th. Seeing none, so ordered. And on the balance, let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items?
That would take council back to the items called special. The first item called special was Commissioner on item number 2, and that was in Arts Parks this morning, and committee met, and a report has been submitted and distributed.
Okay. Why don't we take the commissioners up, and then we'll take other items in the order that folks would like. So we'll take up item number 2 first, and invite Ms. Yanez to the table if you'd like to come forward. And I will recognize the chair of our Arts Parks Committee, Mr. Labange, if you want to, about our commissioner nominee, if you'd like to.
This is the commissioner has a great background in many areas of the Trust for Public Land, also the Audubon Society, where she's currently and will remain as its director, which has done a wonderful job in the Montecito Heights area, which is so nice. And I've walked that area, and I love the new building, and I love the pond when there's water in it, and I love the open space. But to bring to life the city's position, Mayor Villaraigosa selected a wonderful person who could represent the interest of Los Angeles and all of Los Angeles. And I hope we all have a chance to meet her, because the Santa Monica Mountains, if you look at a geological survey map, start at the Pueblo of Los Angeles and goes west all the way through to the Channel Islands. And at the same time, too, you have areas throughout Los Angeles in the Highland Park area that we've been able to reach out and protect and preserve, and also the Augustus Hawkins, old Department of Water and Power site on 54th, I believe, is a place. So give us your passion. I recommend an aye vote, but I would love to hear the passion from the representative for the mayor and us for the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me here today and considering my appointment. I'm extremely passionate about parks and open space. I've been working in the environmental field for some time now at the Trust for Public Land, at the Audubon Society, both of which are well-respected and very established environmental conservation organizations. I look forward to representing the City of Los Angeles at the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, especially when we have the opportunity to utilize Proposition 84 funds for acquisitions along the LA River and throughout the region of, covered by the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. Another special interest is redressing park inequities in low-income communities that traditionally have been park poor and underrepresented and underserved by traditional conservation efforts. So that's my passion, and I look forward to working with all of you on your special projects.
Thank you very much. Mr. Huizar.
Thank you very much. Madam President, I would also ask if you could tell the people standing around here to keep their voices low. We have a very important appointment that we're making, and it'd be a very
Thank you very much. For the people in the chamber engaged in conversation, if they could just move to the back, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
And thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Yanez, for your of all the activities you do in your community and your commitment to open space and providing more open space in those areas that need it the most, your willingness to serve in this commission. I think this is a great addition for the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, and with your knowledge, experience, not only from the Trust for Public Land, but the Audubon Center and your activism in your own community, where you, I think, in El Sereno and Northeast Los Angeles are one of those persons that everyone knows that's there protecting open space, creating more open space, finding linkages for kids who don't have those opportunities to know about wildlife, to know about natural environments, that you're exposing them to them. So thank you for your work. I know that you're a person of integrity, you're very hardworking, and as a CD14 resident, I know we communicate a lot in working on those issues together. So I look forward to continuing our relationship and working together when you serve on the board of Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. And I also want to just acknowledge the work that Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy is doing. Is what was considered once a West Side organization is now reaching out to Central City, to the East Side. I worked together a few years ago with Councilmember Ed Reyes to provide a 10-acre park in what was the very controversial Belmont learning complex, now called the Vista Hermosa project, where we provided 10 acres right next to that park that will be right next to that school that will be operated by the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. That's coming online soon. It's going to be one of the largest open space areas here in central Los Angeles. I'm working with the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy as well in Boyle Heights to create a green corridor for the kids from Roosevelt and Hollenbeck to be able to have a place to walk, to exercise, and make more connectivity between the parks, the few parks in those areas. And also, they're very willing to work in other areas in my district, so I want to commend them for that. And not to mention Ascot Hills, right next to where you live. We're moving forward on Phase 2 to provide that as a passive park for the local residents and other residents to enjoy the beauty of what that provides. So thank you so much, and thank you to the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, and we look forward to continuing to not only protect what we have, but expand what we have in terms of open space. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Mr.
Councilmember,
Huizar.
for your
Mr.
efforts.
Garcetti. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember, for your efforts.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Congratulations. And I want to thank the mayor for making such a smart nomination. And
Thank you.
You certainly have my full support, and I've enjoyed working with you, and I know my staff has as well, on a number of issues. Walk us through a couple things, though, that we're working on. I know you're going to be a very strong voice for some of the environmental justice issues that Mr. Huizar raised, and some of the regional issues in the northeast part of the city. As we're looking at Mr. Reyes's great efforts and the rest of the committee for the revitalization of the Los Angeles River, one of the neighborhoods that's tucked up right next to the river is Legion Valley, formerly known as Frogtown. I've talked with Antonio Gonzalez about that area and some of the other folks that are on the Conservancy. There's a big plot of land, right now a factory, that is owned by the Conservancy. There's been a great kind of pocket park next to that that acts as a swale to filter the watershed and the runoff in the neighborhood and not just put it into the river with its pollutants. And we're building a skate park because that was something that the kids in the area wanted to, and a third parcel that's part of that land as well. Tell me what some of the successes have been along the river of the Conservancy, and where are some of the areas you feel the Conservancy can be more connected with the communities. I think they've done a great job of revitalizing parts of the river, but oftentimes those communities say, oh, that pocket park, I don't really use it, it's not useful to me. What sort of leadership can you bring to that question to make sure that communities are being heard in the parks that are being planned in their neighborhoods?
Thank you. Great question. There's a lot of work that's going to happen through the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy on the LA River. There's $36 million set aside through Prop 84 for the LA River. It's a tremendous opportunity to really listen to all stakeholders, not just the organizational stakeholders, the usual suspects, if you will, but also the community. And I think that's an area where I have some expertise in connecting with communities and really trying to listen in a dispassionate way to what the needs are and really drilling down to find out exactly what those needs are. It's not enough to take, 2 or 3 representatives who make their way to a meeting to talk, but really to survey the residents and to create processes by which you methodically go through the process of listening and taking into account what is being said, as well as comparing it to data that exists out there. We have pretty sophisticated data these days to show exactly where the communities that are hardest hit by park poverty. Mm-hmm. And so, those maps give us one type of data, the community will give us another type of data, and then there's a whole process of building consensus across the board to address those needs in a way that's methodical, evidence-based. I come from the field of public health, and you don't do anything unless there's evidence. And so I think, really having a comprehensive approach to listening to the community, developing criteria for how you do outreach, mm-hmm. and then how you create projects, I think is something that I can bring to Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. I'm very excited about that. I believe I'm the first Latina to represent a seat on that board, and that's pretty important in my mind. And I, like I said, I hope I'm able to, leverage all my skills and experience, and enhance the good work that's been done already by Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. I think we're in a historic period of the city of Los Angeles to change the culture to one of conservation. And so I'm very excited about joining at this point in time. I hope I've answered your question.
No, you have, and some of it, I think, as you get your hands dirtier with the site itself, and other sites that are like it alongside the river. I was very supportive of the pocket parks that have emerged along Los Angeles River. I also know, though, that the residents who are there, sometimes those are more geared towards visitors or people who are exploring the river for the first time. And so where we can take some of the Conservancy land, which has been wonderful to have, and tie that also into those local communities, I think that is the way to do it, through community organizing, through those meetings that, as you said, aren't just the 2 or 3 kind of grass tops, but the true grassroots of the area. And I understand the Conservancy, where the factory site now is in Elysian Valley, is actually getting the rental money from that factory site, and it's helping the Conservancy's overall projects and programs, and it would be great to see some of that refocused into the community that essentially the land is from, and in a way that preserves jobs, builds housing, and has open space. And I know that you're a champion of all three. So I thank you. I'm really looking forward to working with you, and I think all of us in the Northeast are very excited to have a Latina, to have a local voice, and to have a great environmental champion like you on the Conservancy. So congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. There's no further speakers in the queue. Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll? Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
14 ayes.
Thank you very much. Next item.
Next item is item number 3, and that's confirmation of Ms. Concepcion Lara to the Board of LA Convention Center Commissioners, and a committee report has been submitted and distributed to the council members.
All right. Ms. Hahn, or Ms. Hahn is the chair of the committee, am I correct? Ms. Hahn, why don't you go first then?
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, Councilmember Rosendahl and I had a very fascinating committee meeting about an hour ago, and really were enlightened and energized by Concepcion's background, her perspective, and her energy and willingness to serve on this commission. I think the rest of the colleagues, as well as all those who are watching on Channel 35, would benefit, like Bill and I did, from listening to you talk about what you bring to the table, talk about your background, and talk about your vision for the convention center. And I think we would all benefit also listening to you praise Mr. Abbasi and the staff. I think that's really good for us to really highlight city employees in the city of Los Angeles and what they are doing out there, sometimes unbeknownst to us and unbeknownst to really Angelino. So love to hear you talk a little bit about what you talked about to us in the committee this morning.
Yes, buenos dias to everyone.
Buenos dias. Hold my time.
Muy bien, gracias. Well, I'm very happy to be here. I just want to say very briefly that my background includes having taken HBO into Latin America and having created the first pan-continental satellite-delivered service in the world, and also having created HBO Latino, which you can see in this country, as well as 5 other television channels. I'm very happy to be here because I have met extensively with General Manager Abbasi of the Convention Center and Assistant General Manager Philip Hill, who's here this morning, and they gave me an amazing download as to what is happening with the Convention Center and the importance of the economic engine that it provides, as well as how it plays a role in LA Live. And it's clear that Los Angeles City is going through a huge renaissance, and I believe my background, having started and overseen major media enterprises, will contribute greatly to what is happening downtown.
Thank you. Again, I think you bring a very interesting background and perspective and energy to this commission, and I agree with you that we are really experiencing a renaissance all over Los Angeles, in many of our neighborhoods and many of our downtowns, but particularly in the main downtown.
Yes.
And we are beginning to realize the importance that tourism, trade means to Los Angeles and to our general fund. And so we really want to push the convention center and push the bookings and push the benefit that brings to all of Los Angeles. So, Ms. Laura, I wholeheartedly support your recommendation. And I guess, colleagues, we are going to have to take 2 votes on this, because she's actually being appointed to the rest of 1 term and then another term, so we're going to have to take 2 votes on this morning. But on both votes, I hope that we will have a unanimous support for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, it's great to see you. We did have fun this morning, Janice and I, listening to you. Tell us your vision of the commission, why you decided to step forward and go on to this commission.
Yes, I've been very fortunate in my career in having a lot of success in my career. And at this point in my life, I'm very excited and very committed to serving my community and the city of Los Angeles. Specifically with the convention center, I, as I mentioned this morning, have been thoroughly impressed by the general manager Abbasi and general manager Hill and the enthusiasm, commitment, passion, and professionalism that they bring to the convention center and to the city. My vision is to bring all of my contacts, experience, and commitment and love to the city of Los Angeles, hoping that all together will create tremendous synergy and magic and miracles to create even more money for this wonderful convention center that we have, and especially in what it's doing with LA Live.
Tie that into, for my colleagues as well as the viewers watching this, about your contacts and how they'll participate in this new day.
Yes, well, my contacts, I would say, are rather significant in terms of the entertainment and media companies across the world, not just in the United States, but going all the way to, from here to Argentina, Japan, Singapore, Europe, where I have worked extensively. And I think that the vision of the general management of the convention center is to continue to make the convention center a world-class operation. And my focus is to bring my contacts to have conventions here and to spend their money in the city of Los Angeles.
Well, thank you so much for stepping back up to the plate.
You.
And you're a class act, and we're better off having you on the commission. And we appreciate you stepping forward and doing this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much. There are no further speakers in the queue, so Madam Clerk, would you please open the roll?
Madam President, the first vote will be on 3A, which is for the term ending June 30th, 2007.
All right, would you please open the roll on the first part of our vote? Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Now the second part.
And that is for the term ending June 30th, 2012.
Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. We have to go back to item number 2. There was a speaker card. All right, excuse me, I stand corrected. There was a hearing in committee, and we're fine with that then. We'll proceed. Next item, next matter.
Next item, Madam President, item 6 was called special by Councilmember Hahn, and I believe there was a request to take 6 and 19 together.
All right. 6 and 19 will go together. Would you like to take the speaker cards? Both items have already had hearings. So unless there is a request from a council member to do so, we can proceed with discussion by the council members.
Madam President, point of order.
Okay, Mr. Rosendahl.
You mentioned that there were cards, and I know we had a public hearing before. How many cards do you have?
If you combine both items, we have a total of 6 cards.
6 cards. I would suggest that we let that public hearing happen if the 6 people came down here to City Hall to speak.
There's no objection to that. How much time would you like to give them?
If there's 6 people, 2 minutes apiece.
All right. First speaker will be Larry Gross, followed by Shashi Hanuman,
Larry Gross, Coalition for Economic Survival. I want to first, my understanding, a new motion's going in, and I want to thank Councilmember Wesson for fulfilling his commitment to reduce the tenancy requirements to three years. This will provide increased benefits to many tenants. It's the right thing to do, and we urge the Council's supports it. We still have concerns about the means testing and think that's going to open up a whole can of worms in regards to discrimination. But passing these proposals doesn't mean that your work is done. These actions still fall short of what's needed. Settling on relocation assistance increases without restricting conversions and demolitions, in a sense, legitimizes continued affordable housing destruction and tenant displacement. Last week you talked about the need to build more affordable housing, and of course that is a key. But without preserving our existing affordable housing stock, we're just going to be treading water, if not drowning, in a sea of despair. Any effective housing policy must commit to both production and preservation of affordable housing. Anything short of that guarantees a failed policy. Pass these proposals with the lower tenancy requirements, get rid of the means testing if possible, but make a commitment to measures that's outlined in the staff report to restrict conversions, curb demolitions, and stop the evictions now. Thank you.
Next speaker is Shashi Hanuman. Mr. Rosendahl, just a point of reference, we've received, now we have 14 cards. Deanna Kitamura.
Good morning. My name is Shashi Hanuman. I'm an attorney with Public Counsel. As you know, we submitted a letter April 4th, and the letter said that we had some grave concerns with any length of tenancy or means-based proposal. The only jurisdiction I know that has a length of tenancy proposal has other restrictions on condo conversions and demolitions. We think there's many unintended consequences, including discrimination against low-income people at the initial rent-up phase and just prior to the length of tenancy increase. Let's just look at the truth. We have a 4% vacancy rate for rentals. It's hard enough to get an apartment in LA. It's even harder right now for a low-income person to get an apartment in LA. If you do a means-based proposal, it will just make it harder. We'll be hurting the very people we're trying to help. Progress has been made in the motion to potentially reduce length of tenancy from 3 to 5 years, or from 5 to 3 years, but more would need to be done in order to ensure this proposal is workable, including anti-discrimination and just cause eviction protections. And relocation is only one small part of this equation. Every week we get more calls about evictions. More affordable housing is lost, and we need to be prepared for the future. So please make sure to enact corollary provisions to strengthen 12952 and to regulate demolitions. We've been discussing these for a long time. Please take this action now.
Good morning, Deanna Kitamura with Western Center on Law and Poverty. Last week I talked about how if you do not take precautions, the city is essentially painting a bullseye on the backs of the tenants who have lived in their homes just shy of the date their relocation rights get bumped up. And the general manager of LAHD and others warned of discriminatory actions some landlords may take against low-income tenants because of the means-based testing. In order to ensure that the benefits you are creating do not actually hurt the most vulnerable tenants, the tenant advocates urge you to adopt protective measures such as just cause eviction and anti-discriminatory provisions within 60 days. Thank you.
Kate Bartolo, followed by Susan McClellan. Kate Bartolo should be coming up behind you. Is she not here? Okay. Oh, there she is. Okay, great.
Dear Council people, my name is Susan McClellan, and thank you for making this housing problem more fair for the tenants. The most important part still is not being addressed. I ask you to support strengthening the provision to deny conversions and extending it to demolitions if the vacancy rate is below 5%. I hope and pray to God that the Council members immediately stop the destruction of affordable housing due to condo conversions and demolitions and protect especially the poor tenants from having their lives ruined and for some destroyed by being evicted from their homes. I believe it is unfair, unjust, and inadequate for the poor, seniors, disabled, families with children to be forced out of their affordable housing when there isn't similar affordable housing available. The increased relocation amounts are needed and appreciated greatly, but eventually for the poor on fixed incomes that are around extreme poverty and below, this money to relocate will eventually be exhausted, leaving poor people unable to continue to pay the higher rents, which will, for many, lead to homelessness and/or seniors and the disabled being forced into assisted living and board and care facilities when they are not necessary, except that the person cannot find affordable housing. Please have mercy on the poor who are being harmed and will continue to be. Isn't the job of a public servant to protect and serve all the people? Tenants are not being protected and served enough, and I think the council members should fulfill this duty. And I have friends that have become homeless because of this issue, And, I have a friend, 70 years old, who became homeless, was on the street for 2 years, and was forced into a board and care because she got kicked out of her affordable housing. And I, too, I've lost my housing in the past due to, demolition and been forced into higher, so thanks.
Thank you very much. Bartolo. Following Ms. Bartolo will be Jean Waldorf Black.
Kate Bartolo with the core group and also working with the Central City Association. First, I'd like to correct a misunderstanding. There was a misunderstanding that conversions are not covered in terms of the requirement that landlords pay the relocation fee. It is covered. It's on the building and safety clearance sheet that if you do not pay those fees and confirm, checking the box, you will not pass go to get the final approval for the map. And if there is a dispute, it is then in the landlord's direct interest to resolve that dispute because they cannot proceed. With regard to the proposed changes, I think that there is a lot of pain out there in the tenant community, and I think it's very important at this juncture that we show that we are responsive to it. While I don't believe it is the best policy, I think that we understand the position. Now that the City Council is poised to approve what are arguably the highest relocation fees in Southern California, what Central City Association implores us to do is let's put aside labels of landlord and tenant and start coming up with solutions to what I call the 4 pillars of reform. One is better protections for tenants. Second is consumer, landlord, and tenant education. Third is finding ways to preserve the existing housing stock, and fourth is expansion of supply. And I can only tell you this, there are solutions that are out there, that many of which we proposed last February, that can be adopted that will not chase away equity capital. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jean Waldorf Black.
Thank you. Good morning. Last week was the first time I attended a council meeting, and I was a little intimidated. So today I want to speak, and I want to address my remarks directly to everyone involved in this vote. I am a displaced tenant. I am a mother of an 11-year-old child in middle school. I speak for the parents of the students at Leo Politi Elementary School who have excellent teachers. We have a gang problem in the neighborhood that has resurfaced because of the building I was forced to vacate for supposed condo conversions, which is still vacant. A man who identified himself last night on my telephone as Greg Johnson from the LA Times wanted me to confirm that there was indeed a fire on the property at 1126, 1130, and 1134 South Westmoreland Avenue. I thought he was talking about the one a month ago. No, this was the one last night at about 6:30 p.m. Fire Station 13 answered the call. I did not go over there myself at that time because our senior lead officer, Christopher Landry, has told me that I can't go on the property alone if it's not even safe for them. Now, we have an excellent LAPD unit in that area. This area is 1 block from where they're building the new Wilshire Police Precinct and the new fire station, except that we now have to pay rents over $300 more a month. In my neighbor's case, $600 more a month, and now she's got to move in with her mother. We don't have it. I don't even have the rest of my relocation assistance assistance from the landlord who wants to pretend that he's out of the country and hide behind his cell phone and never answer anything that he is asked to by the dispute resolution program, the Los Angeles Housing Department, and hopefully it will go before the city attorney, but I need the money now. I don't need for you to wait anymore for the children of Los Angeles to feel that this city does not want them. Thank you.
Next speaker is Noel Weiss.
Council members, good morning. When I first came up with this idea of the 9 and 17 last October, nobody gave it any shot. I think the people watching over TV should know ideas count, people count. The Planning Commission, I want to basically say the reason why this is here today is because of Jane Ellison Usher of the Planning Commission. We went to the City Council last October. There was silence, but now Jane came through, and I want to salute Mr. Wesson as well as Janice Hahn, because as far as I'm concerned, the two leaders of this council, I don't agree with Mr. Wesson's alternative, but the bottom line is we still are better off today than we are going to be. Janice Hahn stood up. People, again, watching have to know and understand there are no tenants in her district in terms of that have these kinds of problems. She didn't have to do this. She stood up for the people, and I appreciate very much the effort in doing that because it shows what a true leader is all about. As far as the council as a whole, you guys have a core decision to make. This should and can be a leverage into a greater discussion about housing policy. You guys have to decide. Do you want to follow public opinion or do you want to lead public opinion? It's time this council led instead of followed. You guys have to start, instead of coasting, you have to start soaring. And I challenge all of you. Like John F. Kennedy did, we're going to the moon by an X date. I think the president of the council, on behalf of the whole council, should say within a year from now, this council is going to have a housing policy, it's going to have a transportation policy, and the people of this city will then know essentially that this council can do what it needs to do. So I ask for that commitment, and I hope that we can get this done today. Thank you very much.
Mike Shart.
I live in a building that's got a vested tract map, so I'm looking at being evicted soon. I urge you to vote for the increased compensation with the protections for the poor people, because that scares me, the possible discrimination. I have colleagues as a school teacher, exciting young teachers. They're leaving this state because they can't afford to be here. That's not good for our students. I'm urging you not to delay. If you delay this vote, waiting for the perfect solution, the barn door is open and every cow is out, because you've just given warning to the owners. Let's serve the evictions before this is done, and that's what will happen if you wait too long. And again, the people you're trying to protect will be out the door. Do this now.
Chuck Tenon, please.
Good morning, council members. Chuck Tenon. This tenant relocation protection ordinance, which is coming to vote, it's come a long way. I'd like to thank Herb Wesson again and his committee, Ed, Bill, Eric, and Jan, and Herb himself for their hardworking efforts in getting it to this point where it can be voted on. It's a tiny but big step in the right direction that started 20 years ago. And where are we now? On the threshold of passing housing reform, tenant protections, in trying to minimize the housing crisis. I'd also like to thank the following people for their efforts. Noel Weiss for starting this out, Larry Gross and all his efforts, Wendy Gruhl's support, Janice Hahn's support, and all the tenants and people that voiced their opinion in this decision-making process. It's come a long way. We need to go a long way to modify it so it works for everyone, developers and tenants alike. It needs to be, as Herb Wesson said, flawless. So put your vote where your heart is. I wanted to say we lost hundreds of displaced tenants in Valley Village in our area. And we need something. I've watched these people cry and be stressed out and go to places that they could not afford. And so it's about mainly getting the money through that reflects the market rates of 2007 and give these people a smooth transition. If they have to go out and move, give them an opportunity where they can get in a place where they have enough money to do that. Thank you.
Tom Patterson is our next speaker.
Tom Patterson, representing the Valley Village Residents Association. I hope the council people who last week stood on principle and voted against the higher relocation benefits on the basis of means testing will reconsider their position. It's time for you to act, and it's time for you to act today to pass tenant relocation improved benefits. I don't like means testing, but as Mr. Wesson has pointed out, this is a one-year test. And if means testing becomes burdensome and complicated and discriminatory, etc., it'll be killed through our efforts, through the efforts of the public within the next year. I urge you all to act today. It's a year past time to act. Thank you.
Susie Witten, please.
I'd like to thank everyone here for addressing these issues. Last week, the Housing and Planning Departments made a wonderful presentation that I thought really clearly explained the problem. My building was targeted a year ago by developers. I lived in my apartment for 22 years, rent stabilized. I received my eviction notice March 13th. But I had already been involved in this issue with Jack Weiss's office, his housing deputy, Lisa Trifoletti, who got personally involved in this issue and educated me, assisted me, and the other tenants of 4 buildings that were bought by this developer. And these buildings are going to be torn down and replaced with rental buildings. So we're right in the middle of this particular issue. You know, we're kind of a test case for it. And just, looking at my own self and my own beliefs, yesterday there was an excellent opinion article written in the LA Times that really explained the difference between unadulterated greed in this issue and sharing the prosperity. And I want to see LA become a prosperous city in each separate district that addresses the needs of all of the constituents and shares that prosperity, creatively finds a solution. I think the only way to creatively come to a solution is for all the different parties with all the different needs to participate and create a new solution, not an old solution.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Brian Paul.
Okay. The first thing I'd like to do is to draw the President of the Council's attention to the way that the meeting was conducted when this issue came for a hearing and public comment. I think there was some severe problems with the process and the way that this was done. I think it was very unfair. So if you would kindly look at the April 4th meeting, President Garcetti, I would appreciate it. I feel that what we have created is a situation that we are known for in this city, and it's disincentivizing housing and the investment of housing providers like myself. We can go to other cities and not have these onerous policies to deal with. Why would anybody invest in LA? Janice Hahn, have you invested in housing in LA? Do you provide any housing in LA? And if you do, and the rest of you, I would suggest that if you're a housing provider, you would have a better insight.
Excuse me for one moment, sir.
The speaker should address the council as a whole, not individual council members.
Well, the other speakers did do that. They congratulated specific council members. Is this just for me?
At this point in time,
yes, it is. And this was the same sort of travesty that went on at the last meeting when we didn't have people speak against the issue. I think also we have a general manager, Mercedes Marquez, who made some misleading statements in the number of owner-occupied 1 to 4 units. She said there was 89,000. 1 to 4 unit buildings are 89,000 units in, but not those that are owner-occupied. And really, in her presentation, what we saw was a distinct lack of policy, and I think we need to address that seriously. What we're doing is trying to create a Band-Aid for a problem that's much bigger than what we're looking at today.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Dan Freed.
Good morning. My name is Dan Freed. I'm General Counsel for a real estate management company in Los Angeles. And before making your final decision today, I ask you to consider 2 very important questions which I don't believe have been addressed. First, does this ordinance or any of these proposed ordinances fairly take into consideration the fundamental difference between rent-controlled and non-rent-controlled market rate units? The Council's noble desire to increase relocation assistance to help those being displaced from rent-controlled units and experiencing a big differential in rent when they move is not the same as the experience which will occur with non-RSO units, where there is no differential in rent for a relocating tenant. And you have, I think, inadvertently snared all non-rent-controlled market rate units in the city with this legislation. I ask you to consider how many tenants have appeared before you who are not presently residing in rent-stabilized units asking for this proposed legislation to be passed. The answer is probably few to none, and yet this would impose a great burden on many non-RSO buildings. Secondly, and most importantly, I ask you to consider whether the Council has done their due diligence in relying on the data supplied by the Housing Department, which supports the claim of 12,000 lost RSO units in the last 5 years. For 6 months, my colleague and I have questioned news reporters and the Office of the Housing Department for substantiation of this 12,000 unit number, and nobody, shockingly, has been able to provide the support. This has gravely concerned me, and it should gravely concern you, as it calls into question the validity of the very facts that you're relying on to propose this legislation. The data supplied by the Housing Department, which totals only 6,000 currently, does not even disclose or disclaim whether any of that 6,000 is merely mapped for a tract map or has actually been removed from the housing supply at all. Before you pass any proposed ordinance, I ask you to consider whether the Housing Department has substantiated to your satisfaction the numbers that you're using as the foundation for your ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker will be Gina Covello.
Hello, my name is Gina Covello, and I'm against this proposal. We clearly have a problem here. We need more affordable housing, and we need more housing for the disabled and the elderly. But the relocation fees and the 5% vacancy is not the answer to this problem. It's not the solution. It may seem like a solution today, but what about a year from now, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now? We need to implement more incentives to the developers and the builders to actually build affordable housing, to build housing for the middle class, and to build more affordable housing for purchase. If we continue this route, investors, if they do stay here, will factor in these costs in their building, which will decrease affordable housing units in the marketplace, as well as decrease affordable housing for purchase. I think there are other solutions and other incentives and ideas that we can do to help both sides. I urge you all to rethink this and vote no.
Thank you very much. Our next and final speaker will be Michael McHugh.
Good morning. Pardon me, I have a little bit of a cold today. My name is Michael McHugh, and I represent the renters in the Studio City area. And I wanted to be sure to respond to the op-ed piece that Councilman Parks wrote in Monday's paper, but I want to make sure that everyone is connecting the dots, because I feel that there were 3 major mistakes stated in Councilmember Parks' piece. He said condo conversions shouldn't be restricted, but under our current law, if the vacancy rate is less than 5%, condo conversions can be denied.
Also, it was stated in that op-ed piece that condo conversions are an important way to encourage home ownership. But if all council members will remember the testimony from your own departments, only 12% of the population of Los Angeles is making enough money to afford these condos. Only 12%. So who are you building the condos for? It encourages home ownership, yes, for the upper 12% of our population. It does not encourage home ownership for 88% of the population. And another statement in the op-ed was that it says when the supply of condominiums or market rate rentals rises and the demand is satisfied, this results in lower prices. Does anyone on either side of this bar in this room believe that? I didn't think so. So the means test, I think, needs to be thrown out because, you know, once you've been served with an eviction, you don't need the extra heart murmur of having to report your earnings to anyone other than the IRS. You know, that's between a citizen and the IRS, what he makes, not between a renter and the landlord. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That closes our public hearing. Our first speaker in the queue is Mr. Wesson.
I want to thank you, Madam President, and members. And I think I really want to thank each and every one of you for last week's debate. It was a magnificent debate. It was a substantive debate. And it was a 6-hour debate on a very, very important subject. And we talked about a lot of things. I think we made the point that this is not the final step, that this is just a step, and that there's so many other things that we must do. So I want to say in particular, to Mr. Alarcon and to Mr. Parks and to even Mr. Smith, next week we're going to begin hearings on your desire to take more tenants and create an opportunity for them to become owners. That is important. That's another very important part of this equation. And we need to review Mr. Smith's concerns where it relates to units that are 4 units and more. So we have to do all of that, and I'm excited that I was part of that debate. I'm so proud of the work that Ed Reyes did. In fact, I would say that the majority of the credit goes to Ed Reyes. It doesn't go to me. I did the best I could in the short period of time that I've been here. But we would not be at this point, in my opinion, if it wasn't for other members of this horseshoe and for Ed Reyes. But I want to make a point. I want to try to be crystal clear. Last week, we debated on 2 propositions. One was a recommendation from the Planning Commission. The other was a recommendation from the Joint Planning and HCD Committee. The Planning Commission's recommendation was rejected. It was voted down. The only thing what we have before us today is an amended version of what came out of housing and planning. That's what we have before us today. If we do not vote yes today, individuals that receive notice from today to next week will not be able to take advantage of the increased benefits. The vote today is about nearly doubling the increased benefits. One no vote today will delay that process a week longer, and the individuals that all of us really want to protect, individuals similar to those that are sitting here today with us, a significant percentage of them will lose out on these increased benefits. Now, what I am asking is that we approve this unanimously, so that the minute we do that, that there will be almost doubled relocation benefits for every tenant in this city of Los Angeles. And I say that we do that unanimously because one no vote delays it a week. I reiterate the commitment that I made last week as your colleague and as a gentleman, that in the event that this doesn't work, we have a one-year sunset, that I will be the one to lead the charge to eliminate any component of this legislation that is not working. So, members, when you vote today, what you are voting on is an increase to the residents, the tenants in Los Angeles. You may not like it all, but this discussion is not over. It'll be back here in a year, but at least let's ensure that we all but double the relocation assistance for the tenants of Los Angeles. So I ask for a unanimous vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wesson. Ms. Hahn?
Thank you, Madam President. And, I will say I do appreciate all of us really taking a good, hard look at this. And I actually had a lot of people that watched that 4 or 5 hour debate on Channel 35 and had a lot of comments because it really was one of the first times I can remember that we as a council body really debated part of a housing policy. But I think what was made clear by this was that we really don't have a comprehensive housing policy in the city of Los Angeles, and sort of what we are doing is pretty much putting our finger in the dike to keep the destruction from happening. And while it may be a solution today, as someone brought up, it's not the long-term solution that we need. And I know Councilwoman Gruhl apparently called for, in 2002, a housing policy. And I believe that's what we should commit ourselves today to do, is to really, Councilmember LaBonge always wants us to take a Thursday or a Saturday and really, Brown Act it and public notice it and take a full day to talk about some of these policies which we have really been negligent in coming up with. And I urge us to do that on the housing policy. And I will say, I, in my belief, have been very compelled by the statistic that 70% of Angelenos are renters. 70%. That is the majority of the residents of Los Angeles. That is who should be really giving us a mandate on how we create this policy. And I believe that the housing department, that the Planning Commission's proposal was the right one, because frankly I agree in increasing the relocation fees, but I believe in increasing those fees for everybody, no matter how much you make or no matter how many years you've been there. And that was one of the issues that I really had, because I would still argue that someone who's been there 2 years, the last time anybody has moved or relocated, you pay first, you pay last, you pay security, you'd set up utilities. There's a lot of moving costs, and to have to be relocated within a year of that really wipes you out financially. So I'm still disappointed that what we have today has the 3 years. But I will say that the 3 years certainly is better than 5 years. But I really believe that everyone deserved this higher relocation fee. However, as we all saw last week, my motion did not get the support of the majority of the council members. So I left last week knowing that my proposal did not have enough votes. So as Councilmember Wesson said, what we have before us today is the higher relocation fees. We want those to go to tenants as quickly as possible. We know that there are those in the pipeline right now who are going to be getting notice that will be needing this. So I I'm supportive of that. And unfortunately, last week, even in some of the newspapers, it seemed to think that some of us who voted no were against higher relocation fees. And I just want to set the record clear on that. I voted no because I didn't like the means testing, and I didn't like limiting it to people who had been there 5 years or more. But I certainly, without a doubt, am for increasing relocation fees. And they may be the highest in California, but our tenants deserve the highest relocation in California because it is difficult to find places that you can afford. It is difficult to be relocated. It is difficult to have your life turned upside down by a forced relocation. So they deserve that. I am still unhappy with the means testing. I will say that on record. I am still unhappy with limiting it to people who've been there 3 years or longer, but that's what we have before us today. So in voting today, I want people to know that what I most want is the higher relocation fees for as many tenants as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Our next speaker on the queue is Mr. Zine. Following Mr. Zine will be Ms. Gruhl, then Mr. Rosendahl, and then Mr. Huizar.
Thank you. Just a couple items that I wanted to address. Number one, the gentleman who said that when we had this public discussion last week there was confusion. The confusion was the cards that were filled out showed people for or against general comments, and it was very confusing with the number of cards. That was the confusion that was caused when we had the public
It's an
speakers.
important point, Mr. Zine. I'll just pause your time there. Every card that you had, just to confirm and put on the record, you did call those names?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to make sure that's
also
in the record. Thank you.
The other issue is to support Mr. Weston in this endeavor. I've read articles recently, a number of seniors being relocated because of the conversions. People who've been loyal tenants in apartments for many, many years, paid their rent, fixed income, Social Security, pensions, etc., being relocated because of the conversions. These folks look at that residence is their final resting place. That's what they're looking at. And it's sad to see that they're now being relocated. Where do they have the ability to go out and find something they can afford? So I look at this as a measure of compassion for human beings. There's an area in my district, in Reseda area, where a number of seniors, disabled individuals, because of conversion, being relocated, the dollars that they'll receive under the current ordinance does not provide them any type of ability to get a moving van, to move their equipment, to their goods, etc., into another residence, and then pay the rent and the other issues that come along with the cleaning up charge, etc., that goes along when you're renting an apartment. So I'm fully supportive of this. I know that the means test is some controversy, but I trust Mr. Weston in his comments that he'll modify it if necessary down the road. So I'm fully supportive of this, and I think that we need to look at the cost of living in Los Angeles, which is prohibitive at this time, where most people in the city living in a residence in a single-family dwelling don't have the financial resource to buy that residence again. And fortunately, they're in those residences, but the people who are fixed in apartments, who have been there, again, very loyal tenants, I think we have some obligation and respect for them. So I'll support this, and I think this measure is just another indication of the policy in the city of Los Angeles that we want to provide quality, affordable housing for individuals that reside in the city of Los Angeles. And clearly, we don't have any more land to build. There'll be another controversy coming up about another development in my district, and when we look at calling for an apartment, and I made a call to a particular unit where they built some new apartments, and I asked, what does a one-bedroom run? And they said, well, it's not a one-bedroom. They give me the square footage, 596 square feet, and they tell you how much it is, $1,600. How about a two-bedroom apartment? Well, let me tell you, it's going to be so many square feet. What they're quoting now is the square footage and how much it's going to cost. And the cost is prohibitive, especially for seniors, disabled, and other people who are earning an income. In addition to that, the cost of gasoline, as we know, is skyrocketing more and more. And with that comes the cost of goods. So I support this. I'll continue to support it. And again, this is a good measure of compassion for the people of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Our next speaker is Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to Mr. Weston and Mr. Reyes in his absence for their leadership over this last year, and really, as I mentioned the other day, the public hearings that occurred throughout the city of Los Angeles. I think, and Ms. Hahn alluded to this in her comments as well, The one thing that this council is unanimous, okay, that every single person around this table agrees, is the relocation benefits need to be increased, okay? That is the message that everyone agrees to. When you look at the numbers, in 1978, when relocation benefits were first implemented, I was still in high school, believe it or not, $1,000 regular and $2,500 for qualified. Almost 10 years later, just a little less, it went up to $2,000 and $5,000. Just doubled in that, in a 10-year period. In 2004, it went to $3,200 based on CPI and $8,000 for the qualified. And each year it went up $3,300, about $100 for that. Now, again, the recognition in this council is that we all agree the relocation benefits should be increased. And I think generally, a majority of these would also say the 3-year period of time. My concern has always been, and as someone who worked at HUD, and my goal in there, we had the biggest homeownership program in the country, in the history of this country, when Henry Cisneros was Secretary of HUD. That is critically important, and I think the people who are here and testifying from the Southland Realtors and the Central City Association, all of that, we also agree on this council that we should create homeownership opportunities for those who otherwise would not have it. My first home was a condo because I could afford a condo. I could be able to move into that, and so we know that we have to do both. There is no one or the other. And so I think today the concerns that I have had is about setting a system for a small number of people. If you look at if this is correct from the department, and I may have to push my button again to ask questions, but what I thought I heard from the department was that if it was 3 years or less, about 50% of those people who currently reside in an apartment that would be converted to a condo would be greater than 3 years. Okay? Then the remainder, you would look at that 50% and say, what portion of those are qualified tenants that either are qualified based on their age and family, or secondly, qualified based on their means test. My guess, is just at least 25% of those people. So we're setting up a system. My concern, and I've shared this with Mr. Weston, is setting up a system for that 25% of the people. And for the owners of these apartments who are now moving into conversion, if you look at the fees, all the fees attached to it, and you look at the average number, and I'm going to ask this question after probably my second time, what's the average size of those apartment buildings that are converted? Okay, the average size. Let's just say, and in my district where we've had a lot, it's 10. And you look at 75% of those will be qualified. You're talking about 2.5 of those apartments are going to be converted that are not qualified tenants that would get the lower rate. I would argue that if you did the math, that we're going to spend more time and money than we would if they just paid the higher amount. And so for me, it's about finding that balance. And I know Herb has been working on that, and I think the vote the other day was about increasing relocation. It was about that one piece that some of us have challenges with on the means test, and the discrimination issue that was brought up, which we find, again, it is not all apartment owners. It's a small portion, but we have to sometimes do laws that are going to protect all. And so that was my interest in trying to do this. Clearly, we have a council, and so no matter what happens in that first vote and the importance of us saying today we want to increase relocation, that's the message we want to send, is that we want to increase relocation, we want a simple system that works, and we want one that I think everyone can benefit, both the tenants and the owners of that property, and to create the home ownership. And that was why I felt at the time I offered a amendment last time, which was to just vote on a portion of that which was in the report from the committee, and that was not approved by this council at the time. So I ask all my colleagues, as you look at the document before you and you look about the program, let's act as quickly as we can. Let's simplify it and vote for something that's for the relocation assistance, and at this time not comfortable with the means test.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. Mr. Huizar is our next speaker, and then Mr. Parks.
Thank you very much, and I think Ms. Hahn was very on point with something that everybody is now mentioning, is that we are very far away from having a comprehensive housing policy. And in fact, what we're doing today, we're not even addressing the housing crisis. We're just reshuffling. We're making it easier for tenants to go out into a very fragile, very limited housing stock, but this does nothing to increase the supply or make housing more affordable. It just helps those put them into place to go to a limited housing stock. Last week when I asked in my comments about what is our housing policy, many different people have different ideas. I think we need to get to a place where the council, the mayor, our general manager from our housing department, everybody says these are the 3-5 points that we're doing to address the housing crisis. And I know that this conversation has hopefully triggered us and gotten us to a place where we could more holistically and be on the same page on addressing it. I did want to also point out that we have failed to, the proposal by Mr. Wesson and the proposal by the Planning Commission, they're almost similar, except for those people that are not low income and have spent less than 3 years at their dwelling. Those are the only people we're not capturing. So the compromise that came up, in my opinion, is very similar to what happened at the Planning Commission. And in my view, it just sets forth a plan as to who we will address and ensure that actually do get help when they need the help the most. And also, I know it's a difficult thing to do when you're moving, even if you're less than 3 years in that dwelling. But really what it is, it's only people who are not low income, less than 3 years, who will not receive who would not receive the original amount proposed by the Commission. So these are very similar proposals, not far from each other. I just wanted to point that out because I don't think that has come out in any part of this discussion as to how close these two proposals really are.
Thank you, Mr. Huizar. Mr. Parks is next.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just say thank you again, Herb. You've been dedicated to this, and we certainly want to support you. And as I told you, you're stretching me a little bit from 3 to 5, but we're going to be there. The issue that I think is so important in this discussion, and although someone came up and said I wrote an op-ed piece that I was wrong on 3 areas, I just like to say you may not agree with me on 3 areas, but I was not wrong on 3 areas. But the issue is, I think, in dealing with housing, we cannot lose sight of the whole spectrum of housing. We cannot keep investing in the housing for $300,000+ per unit that we're subsidizing and not coming out of it with home ownership for people that really are lost in that American dream and will never have access to it. And I agree with Mr. Rosenthal's comment last week, but twisted a little bit in that, yes, we should be concerned about people rather than profit, but the people that we should be concerned with are those that we invest in. And I think as we look at this whole issue and we talk about relocation, I think certainly we have to have tenant securities. We cannot just allow apartments to be converted to condos without certain ability to protect tenants. But wouldn't it be ideal for us to allow those tenants that live in those buildings the ability to become homeowners in that building and in that community where they already have ties, associations, and relationships? The issue of paying them for relocation should be an absolute last resort as it relates to moving forward with the city's involvement in protecting our housing, creating home ownership, and also protecting those who have paid their business tax, their state tax, and all the things that help this city grow. If we want to be really selfish about it, every time we turn over a piece of property as ownership, it benefits the city of LA on transfer tax while helping other people increase their wealth and a variety of other things. So I think we have to look at it in the whole spectrum. We cannot view our housing policy in the narrowest aspect of only those who cannot afford a house. We have to also look at those who we're trying to attract to the city, those who might have other options, those who have moved to Moreno Valley and spend their life on the freeway. We have to look at those who are firefighters, police officers, nurses, teachers. Why can't they buy a house? Why can't they be involved in the front steps of a condo conversion where we would want them in our community. These are the kind of things I think we need to look at overall and not narrowly focus our housing just in the smallest aspect. As a recipient in the 8th District of only affordable senior and student housing for 15 years, you begin to see how it deteriorates the community because you have allowed all those with options to move on. And our goal is to bring those back with options by providing these kinds of tools. I would like to see that as we go forward on the motion that Mr. Wesson said he's going to put forth in this committee on a hearing, that we find a way to use some of our money to say how many homeowners have we created while we're creating affordable housing units. Can we match that as relates to year, that we created X number of homeowners while creating X number of housing units for renters. Those are the issues that we have to think about, and those are the things I hope as we move forward we'll have a more broadly focused plan for our housing effort. And certainly, Herb, I want to let you know we support you on this, and thank you for all the hard work, because you have put forth a yeoman's effort to pull all this together, because I think the options of not having an ordinance and not having the ability for people to take advantage of it, or going back to the Planning Commission issue, or going back to a moratorium, are all unacceptable compared to what we're going to vote on today.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Mr. Rosendahl is next. Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Weiss, Mr. Cardenas, Ms. Gruhl.
First, I want to thank President Jan Perry earlier for allowing the community to come back up and discuss an issue that's important to all of us. And I agree with Ms. Hahn that just shedding light on it and discussing it is healthy for the democracy. So I applaud you all for coming and speaking your point of view. It's critical for us as policymakers to appreciate that. Secondly, as you know, I've said over and over, the 11th District, we continue to lose units to conversion. It's been 440 units lost since I asked for that moratorium, and I'm losing 70 units a month. And basically, these are people that will no longer be able to live in the 11th District, because it is about money. If you got the money, you can live in the 11th District. If you don't, you can go to somewhere else in the city. And that's what I think the beach is for everybody, and we need to provide, as policymakers, support for all of us to enjoy the ocean. And it's not just for the rich. Is somebody here from the Planning Department and the Planning Commission to speak a little bit on the record? Hold my time, please.
Yes, Jane Blumenfeld from the Planning Department.
Do we have the commissioner coming down?
We do. She's
What's
on her
her
way
name?
down. Jane Usher is the president of the Planning Commission.
Yeah, we look forward to Jane Usher discussing from a citizen's perspective the struggles you all went through. But for the record, tell us how you came up with the report that you did that says no means test and didn't do a threshold of 5 years or 3 years. And why?
When this was discussed at the Planning Commission, the Commission was concerned about increasing the relocation benefits, because that is one, probably the surest way of having some impact on this, on the impacts that occur when there's demolitions and condo conversions. Increasing the relocation assistance as much as possible. They increased it to the $17,000 and the $9,000 number.
How did you come up with those figures?
The numbers, we came up with the numbers pretty much from the Housing Department's investigation of the average rent control, the difference between the average rent controlled unit and the average market rate unit, and multiplying that by, I think it was about 2 years, to amortize sort of the pain and suffering of that occurs during the relocation, and that was the dollar amount. And they specifically...
I'm just curious, as Ms. Gruhl was saying, this hadn't happened like in 20 years. Did I hear that right?
I believe the relocation amounts had not been increased in that amount of time.
I see.
Correct. They specifically did not address the means test and the income differentials, or for that matter, the tenancy, because they were interested in the simplest, most direct benefits that would get to tenants the fastest. And we have had the qualified criteria and the everybody else criteria for many years has never resulted in a dispute or a problem that we know of. So people got their relocation benefits, and proving that you were 62 or had dependent children or were disabled is fairly simple compared to a means test or income, especially in our city where we have all kinds of people employed in many kinds of work situations. And they felt that it would create a large bureaucracy, would be difficult to administer, would result in disputes and longer amounts of time before the actual dollars were in the hands of the tenants. So that was their rationale.
Is there any means testing anywhere in the nation for this issue?
I understand there's means testing in West Hollywood and perhaps other cities, and the housing department may know more. I think there are in the small cities.
And what about this 3-year or 5-year, or why didn't you, as a commission, go into some kind of a threshold? Why did you just leave it wide open?
I think there was a concern, or there wasn't really clarity on whether it was more or less of an impact, as actually Councilmember Hahn has expressed, whether it was more or less of an impact if you lived there for a short term or a long term. And I think we have the tendency, people file the information on the rents and the tenancy for the past 18 months when they file at least condo conversions. But the tenancy was another issue that complicated things unnecessarily.
I see. Good morning.
Good morning, Council.
Could you introduce yourself for us?
Absolutely. Council members, Jane Usher, President of the Planning Commission. Unexpected appearance before you today. Please excuse my wardrobe.
You heard staff explain the issue. Could you clearly tell us why your commission took the position it did with no time frame, be it 3 or 5 years, and no means test? Why did you come to that conclusion? And how long were you working on that? Did you hold public hearings? What was the discussion?
So, Councilman, we had more than one public hearing on the matter. And at the same time, we've been having related public hearings on affordable housing issues, on Mello Act issues. The compendium of hearings, more than a dozen, told us that time and time again, renters were facing an absence of relocation assistance despite regulations requiring it. Here was the story that we heard time and again. Yes, there's a statutory requirement for relocation assistance, but there's this hurdle or that hurdle or this precursor step, and the bureaucracy isn't in place sufficient to handle all of our cases, and ultimately what happens to we renters is we give up and go away. So it was the Planning Department's suggestion to the Commission, and we took, as you indicated, considerable testimony. It was their suggestion to us that the most economical method for both builders and renters, and ultimately homeowners, would be to adopt relocation assistance levels that would be payable with the minimum amount of means testing or bureaucracy, because we simply wanted to get the money into the hands of the people who were going to be relocated. And we wanted it to be done with as few questions and as quickly as possible so that they could move on with their lives.
Hearing that, how would the means testing be administered?
Well, so we asked about that, and the answers were very disquieting. I love our housing department, and most particularly its general manager, but frankly, Councilman, one of the things that was the clearest to us was that our housing department doesn't have the staff to handle means testing or any other hurdles that were suggested to us for inclusion in relocation assistance. They came before us and told us that they don't currently have the staff or the ability to conduct this testing. Something that we considered was whether any kind of testing that we did, how about the possibility of making the development community pay for that bureaucracy? Well, you can imagine that that idea hit a buzzsaw pretty darn quickly. And so at the end of the day, as we balance everything, it was clear to us, okay, let's be honest. We're a city that doesn't have the ability to quickly cobble together a capable bureaucracy to institute means testing. We don't know how we would do it. We don't know who we would do it with. We don't know if we'd get it right. We don't know if it would take weeks and months, and if it would be subject to any number of challenges where these renters actually become victims of a process that we haven't really stood behind them on. And so, thank you. And so where we went with that is, hey, look, let's just cut right to the chase. Let's establish relocation amounts. Let's establish our two-tiered system, and let's make these payable to anybody who has to relocate. And isn't that really quick and clear and achievable at an economic cost to everybody in the system?
So as policymakers, if we vote in favor of this means test, we really don't have the bureaucracy to follow through?
At the present time, we do not.
Well, one thing to clarify, in the ordinance, there's a fee for the housing department to provide the resources to establish basically two bureaucracies. One, to verify the means testing information, and a second one to resolve disputes that might occur, and those fees are in the ordinance.
But Jane, let me add to your thoughts. So we thought about that, and we said, okay, we pay a bureaucratic fee, and perhaps there are appeals, and perhaps this drags out. And if we could monetize the cost, the real cost of all of that, it would probably be more expensive than having paid the relocation number on day one.
Okay. So at this particular point, you know what we have before us on the council?
I only know because I got a hurried phone call.
Okay.
But yes, of
Now, let
course.
me ask you this about 3 years versus 5 years in terms of the threshold. How many people would it impact if it was 5 years or 3 years or no years in terms of the amount of money?
I'm so sorry, Jane. Let me defer to you. Speak to this, and then if I have additional
Percentage
thoughts.
of people we're talking about.
Yeah, we don't know in the planning department. I think the housing department may have information at least with regard to rent-stabilized units because they track them, and perhaps with the other ones since they have the enforcement system. But we don't in the city know what people do when they come and go in their units. We don't track it. We have no leverage. We have no permits that we issue, so we don't know other than what they keep track of in rent-stabilized units, which would probably not be the same given the fact that they're rent-stabilized as the market rate units. So we can ask Housing Department. I think last Wednesday the general manager alluded to a percent that were more than 5 years, but I don't know the answer.
Was that part of your concern, Commissioner, of just not having a 3-year or 5-year because we couldn't get a handle on what that really meant?
Every direction we took, other than the short, sweet one that we forwarded to you, every time we stepped away from the simple and direct, we ran into a quagmire. So that's why we forwarded the simple and direct. So this particular discussion you've been having, yes, it came up, and we realized that that our plate was not filled with the data we would need. Yes.
Well, I want to thank you very much for coming down into this and sharing it, and I appreciate everybody's comments.
You're
Thank you,
very
Mr.
welcome.
President.
Other questions, or am I excused?
Well, it depends if my colleagues.
It depends. We have other speakers here, but we'll try to find out for you so we can be as good about your time as possible.
Absolutely.
Next
Thank
for an
you.
introduction, and then also for the floor, Mr. Alarcon.
Whoops, where did I put it? I can't find it. You have it? Well, I'll have to do the introduction as soon as I dig it out. But on the matter before us, I think it's clear that we don't have a complete package here. There are, I think, some very positive things. On the positive side, we are very quickly providing more assistance to people when they're being evicted and in the process of relocation. In many cases, some of the tenants will receive almost triple the amount that they would receive if we fail to act, and that has to be a benefit to the tenants. Secondly, we've sunsetted this issue, so we've allowed for the opportunity for us to take a look at the process that emerges and then come back and fix it and hopefully address some of the shortcomings in the proposal. And I would mention that in a year, the application that we're not going to get thousands of applications for condo conversions, because that is not the point at which they would have to pay the relocation fee. They would have to pay it when they're basically ready to evict the people, and that time is not likely to occur in the next year for a whole slew of condo owners and tenants. So that would give us an opportunity to really hone in on a better program. On the negative side, we have to be aware and concerned about the possibility of a bureaucratic nightmare in the appeal process. We will have an opportunity to review that, I think, very shortly. And that's something that we will probably have to shore up at the end of a year when we decide to move forward with this proposal, or I would hope improve upon it. I also am concerned that the low-income folks do not have all the opportunity I would like to see for them to get to the top level of assistance, and I think they need it most. I in particular think that the people who have moved in the first 3 years are in greater need of assistance and more assistance because they outlaid the capital to move in, and it takes time to absorb that initial cost, like the first and last months or whatever it is, the security deposit and all that. And so I think that everybody should qualify for a larger amount in that score and would work toward that end. But I think that this measure is going to pass. And to fail to act, I think, is worse than to do something that is not quite a complete package. I also believe that we have to take a hard look at how to create home ownership opportunities in this process. The tenants absolutely need greater assistance to turn their relocation money into an opportunity to buy the condo that they now live in. And I believe that we can do a lot more in that score. I'm committed to work with you, Mr. Weston. You've committed to work with me towards all of those ends. And I believe that in a year, we will have a greater opportunity to satisfy the entire issue, provide to the people a greater opportunity to become homeowners eventually. At the same time, not block people from developing their own properties. It's always a tough call for us, but I think the worst thing that we could do, the greatest sin, would be to not act. And so I appreciate the sunset. I would not vote for this measure, quite frankly, Mr. Wesson, notwithstanding our friendship and our respect for each other and our consistency of support on issues in the past. I would not support this measure if it did not have that one-year sunset, because I think we can do a better job. And having just arrived at the council, I would like to have a greater opportunity to work on this issue and commit to do that, because I can't think of anything more important to the economic well-being of Los Angeles than to increase the home ownership opportunities, the asset building opportunities for people who live in Los Angeles, because I think that is one of the greatest indicators of a negative situation in an urban environment when you have a great majority of people who are renters as opposed to homeowners. That affects your quality of life like no other statistic that I can think of. So I plan to vote on this, joining with you, Mr. Wesson, but I recognize that we have a lot more work to do.
Mr. Weiss is our next speaker, and then Mr. Cardenas, and then Ms. Gruhl. Mr. Over there. Mr. Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I will say that in listening to the debate that we had last week and the presentations from the public we had last week and listening to the discussion that we've had today, it is more clear to me than ever that this is a situation where both sides that have come to the table have made very, very strong points. I think the tenants' rights proponents in particular have made very clear that as the economy in Los Angeles has churned, tenants have gotten burned. And at the same time, I think we've had it presented very clearly from the landlord community that there is concern, understandable concern in the Los Angeles economy, that this council not act in a way that could have unpredictable, unforeseen, and unfortunate economic consequences. Because after all, we are dealing with a situation where, as I know Mr. Wesson will remember, as Ms. Gruhl will remember, as Mr. Reyes will remember, from a hearing that we had in Council District 2 at Valley College, where we had a presentation from a UCLA professor, an economist. And he made very clear to us that we are in a cycle. This is a cyclical thing in the economy. Here's where it started. Here's how it may end. But there's no way of predicting how long the cycle lasts and what will happen next. And his advice was to us, act cautiously when you're dealing with this type of situation. I think, colleagues, what Mr. Wesson has endeavored to do is draw a line of balance. That is how I perceive his proposal in its entirety. It is an effort to try to come up with a balance, with a reasoned solution that does not give either side everything it wants, but tries to act in a way that immediately or as quickly as possible provides tenants with enhanced relocation assistance, and at the same time does not do anything that would have an unforeseen or unfortunate effect, or certainly unintended effect, on the local economy. It may not be a perfect solution, and I have heard him say more times than I've ever heard anyone say that he will be the first among us to repeal any aspect of it after a very short period of time if it is shown to be a bad idea or if the facts on the ground bear that out. I think we should take him at his word on that, and I think it is important that whatever we do today, that we listen to one another, because I think we have people on both sides. I think everyone in this council on this issue is well-meaning. I've seen issues where I may not have been able to say that before, Mr. President, but in this one, I do think people are very well-meaning on both sides. I think we need to have our debate. We need to have our votes. But it'd be very nice, colleagues, if we could walk out of here with a supermajority for doing one thing or another and move this issue along. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Cardenas is our next speaker.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping to be brief, but first, what I'd like to do is let everybody know who's angry about this, whether you're watching on television or you came here before this public democratic process of elected officials. What you're watching here is sausage in the making. If you've ever watched sausage being made, you probably would never eat it again. It's not pretty. It's not pretty, but it's something that is part of what happens. What Councilmember Wesson has done, and I want to thank him for doing this, he has taken an issue at the level of the electeds in the city of Los Angeles, not appointed officials, not bureaucrats, but the electeds, and said, we need to craft a solution. And he has admitted that this solution is not perfect. He has also admitted and committed that over the coming months and over the next year, we will very likely hear more from the public, we will make changes, and we will have something different that it was being contemplated for approval today. And with all due respect to the appointed Planning Commission, this is the constitutional United States democratic system in which this should be decided. Because we as elected officials, however we vote, are going to be talked about badly either with renters and/or property owners, developers, no matter what, people are going to try to tarnish who we are as elected officials. This is a very serious matter, and I agree with everyone that this is not a perfect solution, but I commend my colleague Herb Wesson, who has already let us know this is 99.9% chance that this is not the final solution. But people are being evicted as we speak today. People are getting their notices as we speak today. And there are some people who deserve more compensation than what we have today. So that's why I am willing to vote for this today, because I'm not getting evicted today, but someone, citizen or not, senior or disabled, single with children, is getting evicted today. And they deserve better than what the city of Los Angeles has today. And they deserve better. They also deserve better than what we are actually hopefully going to approve today or next week. They do deserve better. But the only way that we're going to get there is if we force ourselves to reckon with this in a timely manner, because this has been talked about for decades. And I can promise you this will have a much more final and better solution in the next 12 months. That's why I'm voting for this today, because it is our responsibility as elected officials to decide where we stand on this imperfect issue today. Thank you.
Ms. Gruhl, and then Ms. Hahn.
Thank you. And I just have a couple of questions. I think Yolanda Chavez. She's right behind me. Okay. If you could hold my time for a second while she comes. You heard my question earlier, which was, and I don't know if you have that information available, which was how many out of the condo conversions, what's the average size normally?
We could give you the information at least on...
Hold my time.
Yes, good morning. Yolanda Chavez with the Housing Department. In terms of RSO units at our Ellis, we do have that information. The average size is 6 units. On condo conversions, I don't know if Jane has information on the average size of buildings that are being converted. But we know that RSO properties that are being Ellis, the average size is 6 units.
6 units. So you would assume most of those are, I mean, if you're going to have a condo conversion, you'd be Ellising people out, correct?
Exactly. If it's an RSO property. But we should state also that we believe most of the units that are being converted are not RSO properties.
Most units that are not, okay. And the issue on discrimination and the setting up a system, I know there's been some question as to, right now, this item that is before us, does that include discrimination, kind of a discrimination program for all condo conversions, whether they're RSO or not?
No, we will be working on some procedures and language and coming back to committee with those.
Okay, all right. And colleagues, and I know I've had, again, I want to compliment Mr. Wesson because he's been working. This is not an easy issue. And I think Mr. Cardenas was right. This is like making sausage. And you've heard from a lot of our colleagues that this discussion, not only the probably 5 hours we had the other day and today, that this is important to us. And particularly important to me as someone who's been a housing advocate all along, and making sure that we can do things right. And also understand that sometimes we start things knowing that they're flaws, try to work it. And I think Mr. Wesson has added language in the 6-month review and the year review on the means testing. I'm going to recommend something that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of yesterday or agreed to before, but I think as you look around this room and what people have been saying, I'm not sure we have enough votes for either of them today. And the importance, as Mr. Wesson said, the importance of getting this on the books as quickly as possible sometimes supersedes some of the other issues that you might have. And I think that all of us would like to see us take action to give the increased amount as quickly as possible and to have something known versus the unknown. Because we know, as we've been talking about condo conversions and demolitions, all those things, that it has affected the market. And I know in my district, and planning could probably attest to this, a lot more applications are being filed for the track maps and all that. And again, my district is one of the larger ones. So without having to come back, I would ask my colleagues about having an amendment to what has been proposed before, and would ask for a second that says we go ahead with the amendment, but that the department, I know you will move quickly, does not, the means test is implemented when a system is set up to deal with how that's going to work, how the department is going to do that. And I don't know how long that would be, but in the interim, Jane's giving me a look, she doesn't understand what I'm saying. So maybe I'm not being clear enough. What I would suggest is that we adopt today with a caveat, the motion that has been signed by Mr. Weston, Ms. Hahn, and I'm not sure who else signed, Ed, or someone else that signed that, Eric, I believe, that we amend it to say, as of today, I think the date is April 11th, that the numbers, the higher numbers that have been worked out by Mr. Weston go forward, and that the department quickly develop a system where they can qualify people or be able to respond on the low income. In that period of time, which may only be a month, that because, again, we're going to have low-income tenants that don't know their rights and owners that don't know their rights, that in that interim, it's the simplified version there for a moment. Then we begin, as quickly as you can, the means testing aspect of that with the 6-month review and the year sunset for the discussion. And that would be my hope, that we could support, Mr. Weston's effort in there and have a unanimous vote today, because as we've all said, we want to see the tenant relocation amounts go up when you look at the 1978 number compared to today and how it's been limited in that way. And also to come back on the discrimination process and so forth for the city, as you indicated.
To clarify, Councilwoman, we have actually set up a process. It's going to take a while to implement because part of the process is to hire a relocation service provider that would do, and it's not so much income verification, it's going to be income self-certification. So the tenant will self-certify whether they're below 80% of AMI or not. And so they will not be providing income information to the consultant. If there's an appeal by the property owner or landlord, then at that point they'll have to provide that we'll have to conduct income verification.
And when would you be ready? That part of it is, I get the self-certification, so that's
it'll
easy.
be self-certified. What's going to take us probably a couple of weeks, if you approve, I think, an amendment in the next item, is to be able to hire that relocation consultant. So we asked the councilman if he would add.
Sure Mr. Zine, Mr. Weston's seatmate there, would move forward if there's a personnel issue to go through the committee or the council to do that. I don't want it to be 6 months from now, because that doesn't meet, I think, Mr. Wesson's interest.
Exactly.
And I just want to make sure that there's a process and an appeal situation
So
that
we
exists.
do have a process for appeals, and we would
But could you implement it tomorrow?
Yes, because we actually do investigations now for RSO units. So with the fee that's in the ordinance that you're voting on today.
But you said you need relocation. If you had the whole program, how long would it be until you were able to implement that?
An appeal, we do investigations now for landlord and tenant complaints. So
But what you said, Yolanda, was you couldn't move forward on some of it until you hired the relocation.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that part, so we wouldn't be able to move on most of this until the relocation consultant is in place, because they would be responsible for determining the relocation amounts.
Okay. That's just my question, and I don't know if there was a time period sensitive, Mr. Wesson, if it was greater than 2 months that we would go ahead and implement your proposal if it was taking them longer than anticipated, because I think, again, that would be my amendment. I don't know if you have a second for that, Ms. Hahn?
Second. Ms. Hahn.
Thank you. And before I ask a couple questions to the women at the table, can I ask the city attorney to clarify if Amendment 21 21D was adopted last week as a part of this, which imposed sunset provision within 12 months in each of the relocation categories.
Item 21D from last week read, instruct the Planning Department and Housing Department with the assistance of the City Attorney to report to Planning and Land Use Management Committee with alternatives and recommendations for imposing sunset provisions. And my understanding,
Can you hold my time?
it was as a report back. We were not requested, and it was not written into the revised ordinance.
It was not written in the revised ordinance. That's right. Okay, we did not adopt the sunset.
Council last week adopted the motion for our office and planning to return to Planning and Land Use Management Committee with recommendations.
Okay. All right, well, we need to deal with that. Again, I think last week was very, even after 5 hours, was very confusing in terms of what this council adopted and what it didn't adopt. That's disturbing to me because I think there was a lot of us that felt like the sunset provision was a part of this. And if we're making sausage here, I think, unfortunately, some of us are being fooled into believing we're eating healthy sausage by calling it apple chicken sausage, which is still the bottom line. It's not healthy or good for you. It sounds like we are going to, with great reservations, adopt this not perfect, going to be changed within a year, doesn't make anybody happy, ordinance. But here's what I would like the three of you maybe to address is this idea that if it doesn't work, then we're going to look at, and Councilmember Wesson was going to be the first one to champion changes and amendments. How are you going to evaluate whether or not this works? And colleagues, again, on the means testing, while certainly the idea that the lowest income renters sort of deserve the most, again, means testing doesn't tell you, I don't believe, how much money you have at the end of the month. I think we don't know sometimes someone's income, who they're taking care of. Maybe they're taking care of a mother somewhere else or a child somewhere else, or they've got a commitment financially somewhere to a relative. So I think that's an unfair basis on terms of who is most deserving and not. But nevertheless, I'm going to keep saying how much I don't like that. Let me know how you're going to evaluate whether or not this works, and how do you capture the person that was there only 2 years and now doesn't get the higher amount. What happens to them? I mean, do we track these people? Do we find out why that didn't work for them when they have to uproot their 3 children who they just put into school and move to another community? I mean, how are you evaluating whether or not this imperfect ordinance works?
So, Council Member, let me take a quick try. Jane Usher, Planning Commission President. It seems likely to me, barring Jane Blumenfeld answering differently, that the analysis will be done by the Housing Department. And this is likely not going to come back to the Planning Commission except in the following respect. I suspect that as additional condo conversions come before us, the public will take the opportunity in our public hearings to give us their ground level view on whether or not this is working. And it will be therefore on an ad hoc, case by case, quite possibly case specific basis, and will not, at the end of the day, likely give us the full picture. I apologize, but I suspect that's what's going to happen.
Thank you for that answer. Jane, the other Jane.
I concur, but I think the only other piece of it the Planning Department might see is if the length of time on tract maps, at least, you have to record the map, and there's a time period in which you have to clear the different conditions. So one of the conditions of being able to actually have a building where you can sell units would be to deal with this whole issue. So if it gets protracted, we might be able to track that maybe to see if it's taking longer to do it than it did before. That would be one measure of success or not. from the planning department.
Which isn't
Yeah.
perfect.
No.
I think there would be several variables that we would measure to assess the success of this program. Definitely time, in terms of, the time that the income, or I'm sorry, the relocation amount is determined versus as to when the tenant is being, ensuring that the property owner is meeting the timeline on the relocation payment. The number of appeals that we'll receive if there are disputes, so that would be a great measure in terms of, and then of course, because we'll have a relocation consultant, they'll be able to help us understand where the problems are and how the 2-year, how the length of tenancy, how the income determination, what kind of problems it has created and concerns.
Now, is that a specific scope of their work that is in writing?
That will be, in fact, one of the things that we asked Councilman Wesson today is if he would propose today that you give us the authority to issue that RFP.
Yeah, that's what I would suggest that we do, colleagues, is in that RFP, the scope of work specifically spells out that for each relocation, they are to report back on a number of challenges, issues, and problems. I think that has to be a part of the scope of their work, or it's going to be very ad hoc. It's going to be very much, if you think about asking how it went. So colleagues, again, I think it's clear where we're moving today, but I don't want anyone to think that just because we've all said, if it doesn't work, we're going to relook at this policy, because as you just heard from both James, how it works is going to be very subjective and ad hoc, and we're not going to really have good concrete information. I do think we do have a source in the relocation consultant, and I would like to make that as a friendly amendment to this ordinance today, that the RFP specifically spells out that problems, challenges, issues for each relocation. Because, colleagues, we talk about this, but, each relocation is a person. It's a family. It's a life. And we need to take very, very seriously that these are the lives that we are responsible for representing. These are the people whose voices we have an obligation to hear, not just today, but ongoing in everything we do in terms of a housing policy. So, thank you.
And I'm sorry, just for clarification, that RFP, that's 19, item number 19, and there is an amendment on 19A that would talk about the RFP, so we'll include your friendly with that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll add that as a proposed amendment on that. Amendment to the amendment. Mr. Wesson, who right now is our final speaker.
Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I want to try to address a couple of concerns where it relates to the sunset clause. That was an accommodation that I made to Mr. Reyes. He wanted to deal with it at his committee and to bring it back. He's not here today, but it's also my understanding that we could verbally add this into the action that we take today. Is that accurate, Mr. City Attorney?
Regarding adding it into the actual ordinance language?
Yes, since we've already adjusted from 5 to 3.
Yeah, I would have to defer to our land use attorneys on that, whether that's
We'll find that out ASAP.
They're saying yes. So even though I would prefer to give Mr. Reyes, I would really prefer to give Ed the opportunity, because I have a feeling there were some other things that he wanted to discuss as we move forward with the motion. But given concern that has been stated, I am comfortable in adding the language that would make the sunset official right now, this instance. The second thing that I wanted to bring out, or to try to understand, now if we were to vote on this today and we weren't able to get a unanimous vote, the actual increase in the relocation fees would be effective today, correct? But still, Wendy, where it relates to your concerns, the mayor has to sign this, and this has to be posted for X number of days. I don't know how many days that is 40 days, or after the mayor signs this, when does this actually, is it 30 days? Which should answer your concerns where it relates to the specifics, which we believe we had already worked out with the relocation assistance coordinators or providers. And I'm very pleased with the response that I've received from the housing department, and I do want to say that this is one time that the city bureaucrats, I think, have really hopped to it and put in place a mechanism that I think that not only could work, but one that could be properly monitored. So at this point in time, I would rise to ask for an aye vote on the motion, my motion that was presented to you, which is the motion that came out of Housing and Plum with the amended language from Councilmember Hahn and the one-year sunset.
We have Mr. Weezer for a second time, Ms. Gruhl for a third.
Thank you. On the, what was the motion that Hahn made? Mr. Weston mentioned that, what was your amendment, Ms. Hahn?
Oh, well, it was going from
please.
5 to 3 years, and then it was
5 to 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. I want to clear that. Okay. And on Ms. Gruhl's motion, she suggested that we hold off on the means tested right now until we get up a system in place that will be able to work that out. How long will it take to get something in place to work that out?
Because it depends if you give us authority today to issue the RFP for the relocation consultants. And if you do, then we should be able to do that within 2 months.
Hold on.
Or if...
Yeah, did you answer the question? I just want to make sure you got the answer.
The answer was 2 months?
2 months.
Mr. Weston, you can
Yeah, Mr. Weston.
We have a motion in today that authorizes them to begin where it relates to relocate assistance program. So this is ready. This will be ready to go. We do have that authorization language in today. That's item 19.
It's item 19. Okay.
19A.
And just to be clear for folks, for the RFP, correct?
Yes.
Right.
For the
RFP, not necessarily for the system overnight, but the RFP in what she's saying is 2 months.
Okay, so 2 months.
2 months.
And I mean, it's a valid concern, I think, because if we're saying we're going to verify and have something in place and we're starting everything today, the RFP is going to take a little time to complete, get that done, and have something in place. And you're saying 2 months.
2 months. We would issue the RFP, review the proposals, and then come back to you for approval for the selected contractor.
Mr. Weston, do you think that's sufficient to wait 2 months, or would you agree that we should wait 2 months?
No, what we should try to do is fast track this to the best of our ability. But what we need to do, Mr. Weezer, is to move forward on the motion that I introduced with Mrs. Hahn's amendment. We need to just take affirmative action. So again, I'm asking for that accommodation, and we move forward and do that today.
Okay. And again, the system, everybody's going to qualify, except for people who are not low income and less than 3 years. Otherwise, you get, it's a heightened amount from what we have right now. If you live, you're a regular tenant, 0 to 3 years, you get bumped up from the current $3,450 to $6,810. If you're a qualified tenant, meaning disabled, family, etc., you get $14,850 if you're 0 to 3 years and you're not low income. So really, we're looking at a small population. I mean, the system, I think, I was thinking about this and I thought, well, wait a minute, we are going to create this huge bureaucracy, but maybe we're not, because we're actually going to be looking to just verify a few people. Am I looking at this the wrong way? Or are we going to take the, let's say it's 25%, 75%. Are we verifying the 75%, or we could have ways of narrowing it down just to look at 25% of people, or I'm using that number, but...
I think we're verifying anybody who, it's going to be self-verified by the landlord or the subdivider. So they're going to come in and hand us and the housing department a list saying, here's my tenants and here's how much income they have. And we'll all accept that, and unless somebody says otherwise. So it's the how many say otherwise, that they don't make that much, they should get more money, that will determine how many appeals there are.
Yeah.
We don't know.
So the applicant provides that information in planning when they apply for the track map, but at the point that they issue, at the point the tenant meets with the relocation consultant, when they've been issued the eviction notice, the tenant will self-certify that information as well, income and length of tenancy.
Okay. And finally, my last question, if it's okay with you, Mr. President, I'm a little over my time, is at the last meeting we suggested that the Housing Department come back to us with some items in place that will help us prevent discrimination based upon people being low income now that landlords would have to pay a higher amount for people low income. How long will it take for us to have that in place or to have that enforcement?
We've started working on it, so as soon as it's scheduled in committee, we'll be ready.
More or less? How long
2 weeks.
2 weeks? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Gruhl.
Thank you, and thanks to Mr. Weston. I think the information about the 30 days and the action does speak to that. I guess my only request would be a friendly amendment that would say if in fact it's not ready by the time in which it's been approved, the ordinance has been adopted, that we would have the portion that would just say it would go into effect with the higher amounts until it's finished. That would be a small friendly amendment. It may not happen. It may not be.
I think that's what this says.
What? Status report.
Yeah, I could do something like
Okay.
that. We work
A status report, if they've not, by the time it is adopted by the mayor signs it and the 30 days, that you need to keep Mr. Weston's committee and Mr. Reyes's committee informed as to where you are, and if there's any glitches or problems, one, to move it ahead, because sometimes we don't get informed that there's a problem. So I think you're right, the status report, and to do that. So, and I hope, and I think, as all of us, that there's going to be lower numbers. I unfortunately, my district has been impacted, as has Mr. Rosendal's, more so on the condo conversions than some of the other parts of the city, and so we have that gut of trying to respond to that. So discrimination program for all you're going to establish in that. So you'd accept that friendly amendment, Mr. Weston, on the, okay.
Call it as an early warning system.
An early warning system. Let us know. So if in 30, they should give probably your committee in 30 days a report back.
Yes,
and that's
yes,
okay.
That makes sense.
So that would mean I would rescind my earlier amendment and include that language in this, which says they will come back in 30 days to give a status report to the committee, and if they're not able to implement the entire program, that the higher amounts would be there.
All right, that's accepted as a friendly amendment. And that was our final speaker. Yes, Ms. Hahn.
I just want to make sure on 19, my recommendation on the RFP about the specific language.
And that it would sunset, that it would hard sunset, I believe, Mr. Weston.
No, this was a specific language that the RFP for the relocation consultant spelled out that for each relocation, they were to report back the specific challenges, issues, and problems, burdens that arose from each relocation.
Okay. Is there any objection from anybody? And that is accepted as a friendly amendment as well. I anticipate everything now is a friendly amendment, but let me review. We have, there are two that we just talked about. There was also 6A, which you have, colleagues, before you. Again, just to reiterate, one person objecting makes it not a friendly amendment. It's not an acceptance from the maker of the motion. So seeing no objection, that is accepted as friendly. And then 19A, which deals with the RFP issue and the sunset provision as amended. I want to first, there's actually two elements to this. There was the amendment to 19A that made that sunset definitive. And then there's 19A itself, which was to release the RFP. Is there objection to either one of those? Seeing not, then that's accepted as friendly amendment. Mr. City Attorney?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I was just given some language from CD10 regarding 6B, regarding the actual sunset language to be placed in the ordinance. And that's being distributed right now.
Would you read that for the record?
For the record.
And Ms. Hahn, this is, I think, germane, so if you want to listen to make sure that you both are in agreement on this, go ahead. Mr. City Attorney?
That's a lot of
Just that subsection, if you'll, that added that additional piece.
Okay. If termination of tenancy is based on the grounds set forth in subdivisions 8, 10, 11, or 12 of subsection A of the section, then the landlord shall pay a relocation fee of $14,850 to qualified tenants and $6,810 fee to all other tenants who have lived in the rental unit for fewer than 3 years, or $17,080 to qualified tenants and a $9,040 fee to all other tenants who have lived in the rental unit for 3 years or longer, or $17,080 to qualified tenants and a $9,040 fee to all other tenants whose household income is 80% or below area median income as defined by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development regardless of length of tenancy. The above listed relocation assistance payments will sunset on July 1st, 2008 unless the City Council acts by resolution to extend these provisions. If these provisions are not extended, the following provision will be invoked: $17,080 to qualified tenants and a $9,040 fee to all other tenants.
So it's actually up here. It hasn't been circulated, colleagues. I have it, and I just initialed it.
Excuse me, Mr. President. Sharon Cedar Cardenas from the City Attorney's Office. Just to be clear, in the amending language for the sunset provision, it should say the above listed relocation amounts, not payments.
Okay.
Rising to say, so wherever it says payment, substitute that with the word amount.
I'll do it right here on, okay.
Right. But just in the bold.
In that bold section, the fourth line from the bottom?
Well, I believe that there's, it's amending paragraph B of subdivision 1 of subsection D of 4706 to add a new paragraph 4 or subparagraph 4. That would also be the above listed relocation assistance amounts. Then there's another amendment to 4707. It should also say the above listed relocation assistance amounts. And then the same thing for the amendment to 151.09.
Okay.
I better sign it.
Any objection to that? It's been amended. The first two copies are amended there. Sorry, Ms. Hahn?
One more time, what are we sunsetting?
Yeah, the sunset language I didn't. Mr. City Attorney, you're claiming the sunset language was in there?
We're setting the amount?
Yes.
No.
The above listed relocation assistance amount will sunset on July 1st, 2008.
So what are we sunsetting?
So that says
for
the
the
amount will
record-
sunset.
Sharon Cedar of Cardenas again. The way that the motion has been made, what's going to happen is right now there are 3 categories under each of those sections with various amounts.
Right.
This one is going to remove all 3 categories and replace it with $17,080 to qualified tenants and $9,040 to all other tenants.
Okay.
That's how it was written.
Thank you.
Yes, it does achieve that, Ms. Hahn, because it says then these other amounts come in. Okay?
Just to be
All
clear
right.
on this.
Any other questions, colleagues? As amended, we have this before us. Please open the roll. Close the
Mr.
roll.
President, I'm sorry, just for clarification, Council's voting on all of those 6, 6A, 6B, and then 19 and 19A
Correct.
as amended.
The entire package. Okay, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. And we'll send that forth, if there's no objection, we'll send that forthwith to the mayor. Thank you. Next item.
Next item, Mr. President, is item number 14, and that was called special by Councilmember Zine.
Mr. Zine, you have item number 14.
Thank you. I've done my research on that. I'd like to note and file that on item number 14.
Okay, is there any objection to noting and file item 14? If not, that will be ordered. Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, is item number 17, and that was called special by Councilmember Smith, and I understand Councilmember Rosendahl has the amendment on that.
Okay. Would you like to, has that been circulated, or is it
This is...
hold on one second, I'm sorry. Can I ask everybody, please, to keep the order in chambers while we're finishing the rest of the business of this meeting? Thank you. Please, Mr.
Greg
Rosendahl.
Smith asked me to make these friendly amendments to item number 17. The committee membership will not be limited to appointees who reside within the City of Los Angeles. All members appointed to the committee will serve 3-year terms. Eliminate the position created by Condition 1C as the Commerce, Energy, and Natural Resource Committee no longer exists, and add LADWP to it. This is for Mr. Smith.
Okay. There's no objection. That will be accepted as a friendly amendment. Any other speakers wishing to be heard from the council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 22, call special for a card from the public.
Mr. Sachs, item number 22 is before us.
I'm sorry. I have nothing to say on this.
Sorry?
I thought it was something different.
Oh, no, number 22, the Board of Equalization. Okay, thank you. That'll close the public comment on that one. Anybody wishing to be heard from council? Seeing none, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. Next item, please.
Item number 24, call special by Council Member Parks.
Okay. Mr. Parks, we have item number 24.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like, because there's several issues working on the South Los Angeles animal shelter, that it appears to me to be premature to be moving forward on the request to renew a contract for the architect. And I just ask that that item, that part of this report, be severed and moved back to committee, and that we only approve the recommendations dealing with the CD1 animal shelter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. Anybody else wishing to be heard? Please open the roll. I'm sorry. Hold on one second.
Work's already been done. Paid for, right, Parks?
Well,
Okay.
pay for that.
As recommended, then we'll send that back. Do we have to vote on the other part?
Yes.
So let's open the roll as amended, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. Next item.
Item number 28, call special by Council Member Weiss.
Mr. Weiss, number 28.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the concurrence of the Office of the Chair, Ms. Perry, and Commission members, I'd like to continue this for a week.
Okay, that'll be till the 18th, if there's no objection, of this month. So ordered. Next item.
Item number 43, call special by Council Member Parks.
All right, Mr. Parks, number 43 is before us.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm asking for community support and help in the renewal of a $50,000 reward motion. This incident occurred Sunday, February 5th, 2006, where a 27-year-old victim of a homicide, Marvin Powell, was shot to death while riding his bicycle in the area of West 48th Street in South Budlong by a yet-to-be-identified suspect. LAPD's 77th homicide believes that renewing this reward will give them great assistance in hopefully securing leads that will assist in solving this homicide. So we're asking the community for anyone having information regarding the homicide of Marvin Powell at West 48th Street in Budlong to call Detective Joseph Chavez or Officer Frank Alvarez, 77th Homicide, 213-485-1383.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Anybody else from council wishing to be heard on this? Seeing none, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That was approved. Next order of business.
Council has motions for posting and referral,
Those are posted and referred.
and that clears the desk.
Colleagues, now is time for announcements of events and other items of interest for our viewers and audience members. Any announcements, colleagues? Yes, Mr. Parks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have several announcements from the 8th District. The Southeast Neighborhood Council will be having their first Unity Fair Saturday, April the 14th at Avalon between 102nd and 103rd, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And we request all of our Southeast Neighborhood Council to attend. Also, on Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., that's April the 14th and 15th, there will be a community open house and viewing of the recently renovated 86-year-old city historic landmark and cultural monument at the Institute of Musical Art at 3210 West 54th Street in Los Angeles. And that's Cultural Monument number 344. Also, as there was a great deal of news recently about the opening of baseball season for the Dodgers, many of our parks in the 8th District have a outstanding baseball and softball programs. And just to announce that on April 28th, which is a Saturday, Dinker Playground at 10 p.m. and Harvard at 10 a.m. and Harvard Playground at 10 a.m. will start their baseball and softball season. And then also, just for information to the public, on tonight at 5 p.m. at the Epic Center at 3980 Menlo, Dr. Earl Afari Hutchison will be holding the first part of a community series regarding the discussion on the second term for Chief Bratton, and he'll hold that one at 5 o'clock, April the 11th, and then also he'll have a roundtable discussion on Saturday, April 14th at Lucy Florence Coffee House in Lamert Park. And then finally, we'll be holding, working with the South Los Angeles Futures will be holding their event on Thursday, April 17th, where they'll be talking about the future of Los Angeles, panel discussion with a number of developers, April 17th at the Aqua Lounge at 6100 Center in Beverly Hills.
Thank you. Any other announcements, Mrs. Berry?
Thank you, Mr. President. CDD asked me to make this announcement that the Los Angeles Community Development Department is hosting a free workshop to teach business owners about tax credits and other local incentives that can lower their operating costs. April the 21st from 9:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. at the Chinatown WorkSource Center located at 767 North Hill Street, Suite 400. Please RSVP 213-744-9357. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Perry. Any other announcements? Mr. Alarcon?
Mr. President, I neglected to introduce a group, and I want to point out on Channel 35 that there was a group of Girl Scout troopers in the council chamber. I wouldn't want their teachers to think that they skipped school and weren't in fact here. They are from Guardian Angel Catholic School in the heart of Pacoima, Girl Scout Troop 98. I also want to mention that they were sponsored by a very good company in my district and throughout the San Fernando Valley, Crown Disposal Company, Jerry Prieto, who's doing great work in community relations. We want to recognize them as well. So thank you from Channel 35 for attending the council meeting.
Mr. Parks, I believe you're over your quota, but you'll take one more.
Let me just ask you one other thing. Forgot the Local Business Retention and Attraction Task Force will have their special meeting Thursday, April 12th. And just would like to ask council members, we only received 3 council districts that have given us names to be a part of that committee.
That did or did not?
And so we got one from CD 1, 12, and 13.
Okay.
And so we'd ask the other council members if you can get us the names so that meeting can move forward. And so that's meeting will be in 1060, Thursday, April 12th at 2 p.m.
Thank you. And that's very important, colleagues and staff who are listening as well. Be sure to get on that. That's a very important committee for business retention, and each one of us has an appointee for that, so please do follow up with Mr. Parks.
Okay. And then the presenters that are here for this meeting will be from the travel and tourism industry to bring forth what their issues are about the business environment in the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. Any other announcements, colleagues? Do we have any adjourning motions today? Does anybody have any adjourning motions? You do it, Mr. Parks. Can I please ask everybody in council chambers to rise for our adjourning motions? And I recognize Mr. Parks.
Yes. I'd ask that we adjourn in memory of Donald Evan Devlin, who passed away Sunday, March 25th, related to diabetes and heart disease. He was 70 years old. Mr. Devlin was an aerospace engineer who spent 35 years as a grant writer and administrator for the Rwanda Lewis African American Dance Company in Los Angeles. With his help, that company became the largest and most successful African American dance company in Los Angeles during the 70s due to his brilliance in grant writing and generating a multitude of jobs for many dancers through the CETA program. He was born in 1936 in Columbus, Nebraska, graduated from Columbus High School before joining the military, and also returned and graduated from the University of Nebraska in 1962. Funeral service were held Monday, April 2nd at Angelus Funeral Home in Los Angeles, survived by his wife and a host of other relatives.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks. Are there any other adjourning motions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Colleagues, we will next be in session on Friday, the 13th of April. Come with your good luck, and we will see you then.